Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Lavropoulos. We're going to start the webinar now. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to pull up get my screen shared so you can all see it. If you're having trouble seeing the screen, just make sure in the webinar tool you have selected that. So let's do that. You all should be seeing my screen, and it is our PowerPoint on webinar. So this is the first webinar IAM has hosted. If you're having issues hearing me, please let us know in the chat function. But this webinar today will be held on the Receivable Protection Program. And today, I'm really happy to say that we have a great sponsor in International Movers. So thank you for the Eurogroup for supporting us on this first webinar. It's always nice to have a good partner when you're starting out on new things. Later in the webinar, we'll have John Payne, the General Manager from the Eurogroup, on hand to discuss some of his experiences with the RPP. Eurogroup specifically benefited in 2016 to a great degree from the RPP, and he'll share his experiences on that. I want you all to make sure that we'll do some housekeeping, and just for everybody's sake, I just want to go over a few different things. First off, if you haven't done so already, or if I haven't done it for you, please mute your phones. We don't need any additional background noise on the webinar, so please go ahead and do that. If you have questions about anything we're talking about, please submit your questions via the chat tool. Exit out of the presentation real quick and just show you the chat tool. So all you have to do is just put it into the chat, and we will see it and take questions towards the end of the webinar. Okay. Other things, again, use the chat tool if you're having issues, and we can help there. Patient time today is probably roughly going to be about 45 minutes, give or take 5 minutes. So that'll hopefully help you budget your time today. Last, this is a complicated program, and we work in a complicated industry with different niches. So if I can't answer your question today, be sure that I will take that question, run a flagpole internally within IAM staff or within to our elected leadership if necessary, and then share the answers with the rest of the group here today. So to the agenda. First off, I'm talking about the history of what the RPP was implemented and how it was implemented to the point where we are today. Some basics underpinning the basic structure of the program. I'm going to emphasize this a lot, but there are two processes at play with the Receivable Protection Program: one prevention and one of compensation. Hopefully, at the end of this webinar, you'll have a firm understanding of both. We'll data and statistics about how the RPP is working for you as the member, and then tips and best practices on how you internally can best utilize RPP so you can ensure you're using it to its maximum effect. At the top, we'll hear from the Eurogroup International Movers about their experiences with the program, and then have time for questions and answers. RPP, it was established back in 2007, and the reason for it was IAM had created this network of movers throughout the world. And in many cases, you guys are mostly small businesses. You don't have operations in multiple different countries. You're relying on your fellow IAM member to help you service that shipment, and you're relying when you service a shipment on behalf of another member that you get paid on time. we created that network, and then it was decided that we should try and create some sort of financial safety net. And there the RPP started, and it was eventually established back in 2007. At that point, it was determined that it would be an optional member program to apply to join and become an RPP member in the program. The only benefit we offered was the provision of unpaid invoice compensation. I'll go into this, but basically, unpaid invoice compensation is you conduct a shipment, perform service for another member, and they don't pay you. You can submit that unpaid invoice to IAM, and if it meets the conditions of the program, IAM will end up paying you, provided that the debtor company has gone out of business. When it was established, U.S. Invoices that stem from U.S. military and government shipments were not covered. Okay, the basics as it was established in 2007. Moving to May of 2011, we made the decision to include the invoice dispute resolution process. Now, this is the second process that I'm going to emphasize today in the webinar. This was 2011, and what it did was, if you as an IAM member had an outstanding debt, you could contact IAM and ask for their intervention to help facilitate the resolution of the debt. Now, for companies who were part of the RPP, they could request IAM intervention on any outstanding debt at that point. IAM members in general could request intervention, but there were much stricter by which we would intervene. The aspect of this implementation was that the alleged debtor list was first circulated to the RPP members at that time. So we have both of the fundamental processes in place, but leadership just did not join as we came to a head in 2014 when the IAM Executive Committee had to make a decision whether to disband the program because it wasn't being used by the IAM members, or to expand it so that it became an inclusive benefit for all governing and core members. The nation was made that the financial safety net was valuable enough that if IAM made it an inclusive member benefit, the members would find value in that decision. Done on January 1st, 2015. As part of that expansion, all unpaid invoices stemming from U.S. military and government shipments were now covered. All governing members now receive the alleged debtor list. And last, I didn't mention this before, but we had strict compensation payouts, payment limits for the optional program. Because we expanded it to the whole governing and core, able to increase the compensation payouts from $4,000 per claim to $20,000 per claim. So the basics of the program are as follows. The program RPP is funded by the IAM governing and core members. Each, as part of their dues, they pay $150 into the RPP reserve fund. That $150 is a part of your membership dues. You don't see it on your invoice, but that $150 that you pay goes to that RPP reserve fund. The money RPP reserve fund is then used to pay out unpaid invoice compensation payouts at the end of the fiscal year, and then administrative fee to IAM to run the program. The entity that's responsible for overseeing the RPP is the IAM Executive Committee. On this slide, I'll emphasize again, it's composed of two separate but connected processes. I emphasize this strongly enough because it is a big point of confusion for our members, so I'm going to dive pretty deep into this. Two separate, they complement they complement each other, but they also have different rules. So look from the top. you are all IAM members, and you're owed money by another member, and report it to IAM. What we'll do is we'll first record the debt, and we'll assess, see if it is a valid unpaid invoice compensation claim, whether IAM can intervene on your behalf through the invoice dispute resolution process. Because unpaid invoice compensation is we paid out after a debtor company goes out of business, I'm going to tackle the dispute resolution process first. Hopefully we can resolve the debt before we actually have to pay you. Invoice dispute resolution process, how does it work? You as an IAM member, you can request IAM intervention on outstanding invoices owed to you by another IAM member if reported debt is at least 120 days old on the invoice date, at least $3,000 is outstanding, and that can be one invoice or the cumulative amounts of several invoices. If it stems from the transport or storage of used household goods or personal effects or privately owned vehicles. Now, conditions do apply. So I would encourage you to read the RPP operating rules and regulations. Those three points are the principal things we look at when determining whether we can intervene or not on behalf of a member. The invoices meet the necessary conditions. What does IAM do next? Well, staff will intervene on your company's behalf up to separate times with the alleged debtor. The company owes you money. If the debt remains unresolved after 3 separate interventions, we do punitive actions that we can lay on the alleged debtor. First, if $1,000 or more is owed, we can start expelling that company from the association. Now, right now, the way the bylaws are written, US dollars has to be owed to one company. We are moving a bylaw amendment forward, be voted on by the membership in October, to say if cumulative debts are owed by one member to several members, they be expelled from the association. So that bylaw amendment coming in October. The action that we can take is we can add the company to the alleged debtor list. Now, I've put asterisks there to just emphasize the point that staff does have the discretion to put a company or not on the alleged debtor list. In the past, we have used that discretion when we feel like a company is making every effort to resolve a debt, but having serious cash flow issues, or they're just they're making an effort. They're going into hiding or being quiet. It's the companies that are being quiet that we automatically put to the alleged debtor list because we have to use that stick to compel some action. If a company is working with us, we will try and work with them. Debtor list. What is it? So basically, the debtor list is an email distribution that we send out monthly. It includes the list, a link to the list that we house on our website, listing all the IAM members who have failed to resolve their outstanding debt through the invoice dispute resolution process. In and of itself is valuable business information for you to have and looking at what agents to use in statements. But emphasize one point here. The debtor list also includes a number of other elements that I think are very valuable for all of you to know. First, we include any updates to the RPP operating rules and regulations in that email distribution. Also report on RPP data and statistics there. Companies have just joined IAM, which companies are prospective members, which companies have just been canceled, and which companies are misusing the IAM name or logo. I'll emphasize specifically about the prospective membership. Before a company can get into IAM, they have to pass through a 30-day prospective member period. You, as a current IAM member in good standing, have the right to review that list and lodge any objections to prospective members if you feel like they are either not creditworthy or do not act ethically in their business dealings. So before a company can get into a membership, we're encouraging all of our members as proactive as possible so that they protect the network they protect the network themselves as well. So dispute resolution process, that is the first process. We try and resolve the debt through that process. However, sometimes we're unable to resolve the debt. And it becomes a situation where I will compensate you for that debt. This second process, the unpaid invoice compensation process, works. So a member goes out of business. An IAM governing or core member may be compensated for an unpaid invoice owed to it. If all the conditions are met by the claimant, it will receive reimbursement through the IAM Receivable Protection Program. The maximum amount your company can claim, the maximum amount your company can receive from unpaid invoice compensation is $2,000 per claim. So per claim is an important thing to emphasize right now. If you're owed $50,000 from one debtor that goes out of business, and then $40,000 from another debtor that goes out of business, you recover up to $20,000 for both those claims. So in total, $40,000. So we put a cap on the claim, which is the set of unpaid invoices owed to you by the other IAM member. We disperse the unpaid invoice compensation payouts. This is subject to program thresholds. Why do it at the end of the fiscal year? Well, it all stems back to the fact that we have to protect the solvency of the RPP Reserve Fund. The RPP Reserve is the amount of money, is the fund where the money governing and core members pay into at the beginning of every year when they pay their dues. So we have compensation limits in there to protect that fund. So the biggest limitation that we've put on our compensation payouts is the maximum total annual distribution limit, which is 80% of the available funds in the reserve fund. Our forecast for 2017 is that we will have all $200 to pay out on qualified unpaid invoice compensation claims. That could fluctuate lower if we have less members at the end of the year, or fluctuate higher if we have more members at the end of the year. It all depends on how many members are paying into the program. We talked about the maximum annual compensation limit per claim, but second, the last limitation that we have for the program is maximum annual compensation limit per defaulting company of 55% of the maximum total annual distribution limit. So basically, if there are 3 companies that go out of business during the and $100,000 to pay out in available funds, if one owes $50,000 to other IAM members, we will only pay out 35% of available funds, which is equal to $35,000. Just an example. We've never encountered that before, so we'll see if that happens this year or in subsequent years. But in the event that the RPP has reached the maximum total, either the annual distribution limit or the annual compensation limit per defaulting companies, we start making proportional payments. It's complicated, so I'm going to give an example. Say, for instance, the 2017 maximum total annual distribution limit is set at $100,000. This is just an example. So this is not, it will be for 2017, but I use big round numbers. And in this example, let's say IAM approves claims amounting to $110,000 US in 2017. This exceeds the $100,000 limit. Therefore, we must proceed to proportional payments. Proportional payments are calculated by dividing, I think I have this backwards, it should be $100,000 US divided by $110,000 US, and that will yield a percentage of 90.9%. So once I get that percentage, all approved claimed invoices are then multiplied by it to obtain the adjusted compensation payout. So had a claim with the RPP, and it was approved US dollars. We would that payout by 90%, and you ultimately receive $9,090 US and 91 cents. Now, this past year in 2016, did hit the total annual distribution limit, and we did proceed to proportional payouts. And those proportional payouts were equal to 87% of the original amount we approved. So it does happen, and it could be reality, but we're hopeful that as we grow the program, we'll run into the situation less and less. So, compensation. What is required? Okay. The paid invoice must be reported within 120 days from the date of its issuance. Now, let's analyze this point, because this is where the rules differ for the invoice dispute resolution process and the unpaid invoice compensation process. For paid invoice, we must have notified of the unpaid invoice within 120 days. If it's within 120 days, we will automatically deny it. Now, the invoice dispute resolution process, we only intervene after 120 days. So there a lot of confusion stems. The requirement of the unpaid invoice compensation, the invoice dispute resolution process, is that it too has to stem from the transport or of used household goods or personal effects, or owned vehicles. The IAM member that the claim was issued against has to have filed for bankruptcy, ceased to have been declared insolvent, or no longer operating. The caveat to that last point is that a company that ceases to exist as a result of a merger or acquisition by another entity is considered liable for its debt, and the claim would not be covered under the RPP. We would still consider that the entity that was acquired or merged is liable for the debt. Now, again, there are a lot of other requirements in the operating rules, but these are the key requirements. If you have other questions about it, I encourage you to go to the RPP operating rules and regulations and see the full list there. So now into ultimately the RPP delivers back to the IAM governing and core members who pay into the program. So since we made it an inclusive member benefit in 2015, IAM has paid out $274,118 and change on qualified claims. We've also paid out, helped to resolve just under $300,000 US through the invoice dispute resolution process. So the value IAM has delivered back to the members through the RPP is $573,208 US and 29 cents. Now this figure does not account for the business intelligence and information that we deliver to you through the alleged debtor list. We don't know how to quantify it just yet, but we know based on the fact that it is our most open email every month that people derive a lot of value from knowing the information in that email distribution. Break it down by the members who have paid into the program. Since its implementation, members have individually we delivered $333 and change back to each of them, or $166.26 per year. So I think that the RPP is working. As it matures, as more funds get put into the RPP Reserve Fund, we're going to expand it in different ways to deliver even more value back to you. Showing since its implementation the value of the invoice dispute resolution process, and those the amount we've resolved by intervening on behalf of other members to help facilitate their debts. So you can see the final 2 years are what I want to spin on. We resolved a lot of debts in 2015, and unfortunately dipped in 2016. And we're attributing that to the large number of IAM members who went out of business in 2016. Compared to 2015, we only had 3 companies IAM paid out compensation on. In 2016, there were 8. So the interventions that we initiated in 2016 ended up proceeding to unpaid invoice compensation because the companies ended up going out of business. An addition there that I wasn't sure about, but we finally got to the unpaid invoice compensation statistics. And I didn't provide a chart here because I just want to emphasize some of the data points. Make 2 separate points. Total invoices received and total amount claimed. 2015 to 2016, you can see both numbers increased somewhat proportionately to one another. And to us, that shows that the members are gaining a greater awareness of the RPP and using it as a member benefit. Now, the other trend I want to hone in on is down here with total invoices approved, percentage of invoices approved, and total payout. For 3 indicators, they both increased like the first 2 I pointed out, but we different in the fact that these relate directly to those number of defaulting companies in 2016. Like I said, in 2015 we had 3 defaulting companies. In 2016 we had 8 defaulting companies. So that accounts for the increase on those 3 specific data trends. Now I've included here, and let me go back. I included here the total amount IAM approved for payout in 2016. Now, as I said, when we were talking about compensation limits, IAM hit the compensation limit, the maximum total annual distribution limit in 2016. So we ended up paying out $192,500 qualified claims in 2016. But this is the total amount we initially approved. So as you can see, it rose dramatically from almost 82,000 to 219,000 and change. Emphasized last time, through the unpaid invoice compensation process, we have paid out almost 275,000 to date. Made it an inclusive member benefit. Okay, on through some data and statistics, into some tips and best practices for you to take back to either your employees or colleagues, and to start using some of these best practices to ensure you're going to take full advantage of the benefit. So first off, always make sure you're conducting work on behalf of a member in good standing. Have our online directory. This is updated in real time, so you have the information that IAM has. This can be accessed through our website. So if you're familiar with the company, and if you're unfamiliar with the company, and they're an IAM member, please go to our website, access the online directory, and make sure they are a member. If not, we will not cover that invoice under the RPP. General rule, I would say, start reporting your invoices invoices to IM if one becomes 60 days or older. This will ensure that you never exceed the 120-day limitation, and your invoices will always be considered eligible and denied for that specific reason. Third, make sure you the alleged debtor list. Circulate it to your employees, circulate it to your colleagues. If you want us to send it directly to your colleagues or employees, let us know. We'll be happy to do it. Just really good information about what's going on in the network, that you can be proactive in making sure you're working with the right people and making sure that all your invoices are eligible for the alleged debtor, for the RPP. I emphasized previously when we were talking about the alleged debtor list, but please read prospective member list every month and comment on it if you have a question or if you have an objection. It literally takes only about it only takes about 20 seconds to scroll through the prospective member list just to see if there's any companies on there that you may have an issue with. And then finally, when you any debts should be reported to rpp.iamovers.org. And please provide the following documents when you do that. Complete the unpaid invoice compensation claim form, which is available on our website. Provide paid invoices that are outstanding. Provide services and the acceptance of the quote by the debtor. The inventory, the bill of lading for the shipment, at least 3 records of correspondence between your company and the delinquent one. Confirmation that the delinquent company is out of business. Now, that information doesn't have to be provided at that point, but that's ultimately the documentation that we will need to approve the claim. We are working on an online form to provide a little bit easier way for you guys to report this debt. It's not ready yet, but we'll circulate it when it is. And now, in addition to Jane from the Eurogroup International Movers, as the Eurogroup is sponsoring this webinar, and we're a big beneficiary of the RPP in 2016. So just with me 1 second while I make John the presenter, and hopefully we won't have any technical difficulties while we transition to this to John. So just let me know once you've had an opportunity to screen. Let me know, and I think you may be. You there, John?
I can hear you.
Okay, really quickly before you start, again, I just want to give my thanks to John and the Eurogroup International Movers for sponsoring this webinar. Through their support, they've made this this webinar possible. So, John, without further ado, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Brian. I don't know whether to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Obviously, people are dialing in from the world, so I'll say hello, I think. Let me just start by just telling you a little bit about Eurogroup. We are a UK-based international moving company. That's what we do. We don't handle much in the way of domestic moves, commercial moves. We trade internationally. So, given the size and the scope of our business, we actually work with a number of partners and agents around the globe. And obviously, that means that we build up debts we owe them, they owe us, and we work very much on a reciprocal basis. And from time, we find ourselves in some difficulty recovering a debt. And that's actually what happened to us back in 2016. The situation was that we'd been trading with a company for a considerable amount of time. There hadn't really been any issues or problems, but actually what became very evident later on was that they found themselves in extreme financial difficulties. By the time we had spotted it, we recognised that we were going to struggle very much to recover the debt that was owing to us. So obviously we made inroads into speaking with AM and put money in AM to see what could be recovered. By the time we'd done that, we were actually a little bit late for the invoice dispute resolution to kick in and help us. So we had a situation where we were really looking at putting in and using the unpaid invoice compensation system. We believe quite fortunate because although we covered $17,000 from debt that exceeded that considerably, the situation is that had the scheme not existed and had we not been aware of it and put in plan with the action that we did, to be frank with you, we would have seen none of that $17,000. So I think that we are testimony to the fact that the scheme can work. We again were fortunate that we recognised what the scheme was. It was there, we dealt with it. But I believe that there is a lot more scope with members to use the scheme. I think, as I say, we are testimony to the fact that it can work. I think, Brian, that really explains who we are and how we benefited from the scheme. If there are any questions that I can help with, then I'll gladly help you.
Let me just see. I'll make myself the presenter again and share my screen again. Hold on. You should be able to see me again. For talking about that, and yeah, I think Eurogroup had a number of big claims last year, and we paid out $15,540 on several claims because that was the adjusted claim payout after the original claim had to be adjusted for hitting that compensation limit. So we were really happy that even though the Eurogroup didn't get made whole, we were able to recover and pay out a percentage of that money. It wasn't insignificant. So we were happy to do that, and I think you guys would realize that through this program, I can help you recover those unpaid funds. So we have a few questions, and close to our 45-minute time frame. So I just go to the questions that have been posed, and just bear with me as I to that screen share. So many questions. The only ones I've seen so far from my esteemed colleague Chuck White, and he asked first, how long will a company stay on the alleged debtor list? In general, as long as the company is willing to keep paying their dues, we'll keep them on in perpetuity until they facilitate the repayment of that debt. If we cannot expel them from the association. So let's take an example. A company owes another member $5,000 US and refuses to pay it. However, they keep paying. They keep paying their member dues, but fail to resolve the debt. We'll come on the alleged debtor list for however long we need to. But because it's under that $10,000 US limit, we don't have the authority under our bylaws to expel that company from the association. And they also ask, how do you determine if a company has ceased operation or has filed bankruptcy? Well, this is a fairly involved process, particularly for the companies that kind of stop operating and no longer exist. It's easy when you get a bankruptcy notice or a letter from a lawyer stating that the company is no longer operating, but that's not always the case. So we check business records in the country or jurisdiction in which the company is registered. We follow up with industry experts within that market to see if they have any information. Previously, we've even hired a private investigator to check to see if a company was out of business, particular locale. So there are a number of ways we're going about it to see how we can declare a company as no longer operating or having ceased to exist. So Fatima Calderon asks, should we report invoices that are less than $3,000? Absolutely. Under the unpaid invoice compensation program, there's no limit to how much we're going to pay out on the bottom end. So if you have a debt of $500 that is eligible for the unpaid paid invoice compensation. The $3,000 limitation really sets is with the invoice dispute resolution process. When doing that process, it was determined we didn't want IAM staff intervening on debts were less than that amount, because we'd be intervening on all sorts of debt around the world, and it could lead to an administrative nightmare. But unpaid invoice compensation cover your debts from anywhere from $0 to $20,000 at this point. Kathy asks, I received a letter stating a debtor has closed its store and it's selling their assets and will not receive any payment on past due invoices. I can put this as a claim, correct? These are precisely the types of issues that the unpaid invoice compensation is meant to handle and ultimately out on. Now, for this specific issue, we will need to check the specific nature of how this company closed their doors, but this is precisely what the program was ultimately designed for. I'm not seeing any other questions, so this is the final opportunity. If you have any further questions about what's going on with the program, or any questions about anything I presented today, please feel free to put it in the chat tool. Otherwise, I'll release you from this webinar and let you get back to work. It's like there is no other questions. I just want to say thank you to all of you for joining us today. I hope you are taking away some valuable information to share with your colleagues and employees at your companies, and I hope through this that if you ever run into a bad situation where your company doesn't get paid, you can recover money through the RPP, whether through the invoice dispute resolution process or the unpaid invoice compensation process. And please join me in thanking our sponsor for today's webinar, the Eurogroup International Movers. Thank you, John, for participating. With that, last one, if we are recording this, so I will try and circulate this as well as to all IAM members. So I will share that as soon as I can. Appreciate everybody's participation today. Thank you again, and hope you have a great rest of the week.